All right. Welcome. So let's do this. I got a couple of things for you today. We're gonna change our topic for a little bit. We're gonna touch on nutrition. But what I wanted to do first was I wanted to answer any questions that we had. So we'll start by answering questions going kind of back to last week, especially to the balance, see how everybody's doing with that. Then I've got a couple of like big areas with some takeaways to help you on the nutrition side. And then I know there were some questions that this group had specifically, so I wrote those down, and let me just make sure I got it open to my correct page on my notes. And if I don't get those questions answered, I can, you can ask those questions at the end too. So I'll leave plenty of time to answer those questions. But let's go ahead first and see, let's go back to last week. Last week we talked about balance. I gave you a balance program. Just wanted to make sure that everyone has gotten the materials, first of all, was able to download them. And then if anyone had any questions pertaining to them, or if there's no questions, if somebody had something that, hey, I want to share this, I noticed this, or I did this different, now would be the time.
I thought they were great.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been good. I took the little test and been trying to do the daily ones. So
okay.
It's better making it routine.
Okay, so you've been trying to do them daily. Okay, great. Awesome. The test gave you did everybody have a chance to take the test? Just maybe give me a thumbs up if you're muted, or you can say, yeah, okay, great. Surprised, not surprised?
Nope.
We got a
I
thumbs
did better
down.
than I thought, actually.
Okay.
I think I mentioned this last week. I think pickleball's actually improved my balance. So
okay, all right. Which obviously it would, right? Because you're working at it. Don't forget though, the test, and you can go back and take that test at any point in time. The test is just simply giving you your starting point, right? Here's where I'm at. So if it was only, let's just say if it was only 20 seconds, then the next time when you get to 25 seconds, that's improvement. And you have to say, hey, I did it, right? That's improvement. That's different. So don't be too down on yourself. And I know somebody in the earlier group mentioned that, hey, I did okay. And then I closed my eyes and it was like, whoop, like 2 seconds, I couldn't do it. And I said, just use that to show you, here's the opportunity for improvement. I do a lot of workouts with Peloton. And I do, I love being on the bike, but I don't have access to the bike. I get access to the bike through the club. And so I don't have access to the bike right now. So I've been doing a lot of strength training workouts in Peloton, which I don't always do because I normally just do my own, right? I create my own. I have to tell you, I've really enjoyed these strength workouts because the coaches they add in a lot of balance right into the strength workouts. And so it's been really fun. And yesterday I was doing a strength workout, and it had a balance component to it. And it was something I don't usually do, a type of balance move. And boy, I got to tell you, the first couple times, there were 3 sets of it. The first several times I was really challenged by it, which is a good reminder that the minute you start moving and adding variables, your balance is always going to change. It's just a floating target. So be patient with it. Cool. All right. Any question? Does anyone have any questions on balance, or or anything we've talked about previously to this point? Okay.
I don't have a question. I was going to say, it is really good stuff. It's it's amazing how challenging it is, and good for you at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, you want a good one. You kind of laugh, right? Those bird dogs, right? Yeah. If you've tried the bird dogs. So if you really want to challenge yourself, so when you get good at the bird dogs, after you've done the bird dogs for a while, try and do them on the same side. So instead, right now it's opposite sides, right? So you'd have your left arm forward and your right leg back, and you'd be bringing them together. So if you really want to challenge yourself, get your left arm and your left leg, so you're balancing on your right side. That's a challenge. That's really tough. Really, really tough.
Thank you, CJ.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And if you ever want to have fun, there's a Canadian athlete. His name is Mark McMorris. He's a snowboard athlete. And he's active on Twitter. I'm not sure where else he is. So he's, 20 something. And obviously as a snowboard champion, you have to have unbelievable balance. He's doing all kinds of tricks, right? So you have to be able to balance in the air. And he goes through sometimes in his gym and he sets up these balance workouts. I'll see if I can find a link to a video that's not on Twitter so everyone can see it. So he'll like take a foam roller, right? Everybody knows what a foam roller looks like. And so he'll plan it so he has to roll across on a foam roller and jump off the foam roller onto like a balance beam and then jump off on a trampoline onto a stability ball and stand on this. I mean, it's like crazy balance. I mean, it's like, holy moly. I mean, I bust my nose. I'll see if I can find one of those videos because there really is like, whoa. Okay, let's see. So let's jump in. If there's no more questions, I want to go ahead and I want to jump into today and talk a little bit about nutrition. When it comes to nutrition, one of the things that actually both groups asked, they asked something to the effect of how have you been able to keep off 100 pounds for the length of time that you have? And I lost that weight. I was 38 years old when I lost that weight. I'll be 57 this summer, so 19-ish years. And it's kind of funny because whenever anyone asks me that, it really makes me focus on what's different. And I'd love to tell you everything because really, truly, pretty much everything is different. But what I always keep coming back to, I keep coming back to some of the basics. And one of those basics that we're going to cover today is really how I think about it. Because even though the things I do are different, how I think about it is dramatically different. So that's going to be one of the second thing we'll talk about today will be how we think about food and nutrition and kind of all those things in general. The first thing I want to talk about is I want to give you some quick wins. And quick wins, here are some simple things, or a simple thing that you can take and you can do to start changing your nutrition quickly. This will actually help you change it quickly. So what I want to talk about today, what we're going to talk about today is first of all, sugar, is eliminating sugar. Sugar and flour are big culprits. And in my Fit After 50 program, I dig real deep into both of these. But since I want to just give you kind of a quick win, we're going to focus primarily on sugar. Here are a couple stats for you. The average American is consuming more than the recommended amount of sugar by about 57 pounds a year. Okay. Our daily intake of sugar for us gals is 25 grams, which is about 6 tablespoons a day. For gentlemen, it's about 31 grams, which is 9 tablespoons per day. Most of us are probably more in that 70-ish gram a day region. And a lot of it is because food marketers are super duper sneaky about where they put it, what they call it, how they do it. A lot of science has gone into making us go to the store and buy more of whatever their stuff is, whatever their product is. So it goes into the science of how they make it. It also goes into the science of how they market it. And I want to give you a tool to help you combat that a little bit today. So just know that's our goal, is to start to control our sugar just a little bit more. So let me pop this up here. Give me just a second and I'm going to start sharing the screen. Okay. All right. So what's important to understand first is why sugar, and again, this goes, flour is the same response as this dopamine response, but why it has such a impact on our body. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and it's our feel-good center. It gets released after we have eaten, and it boosts our mood. It makes us feel happy. It increases our motivation. We have the ability, many of us have the ability to focus more. We get a greater attention span. So when we do something that increases this dopamine, it gets our body's attention. And as we've evolved as a species, right? Some of this stuff is kind of built into us from way back when to get us to do certain things. And the dopamine release that comes after food was something that would get us to eat, right? If we felt good after we ate, we're going to continue to look for food. If we had felt crappy after we ate, we probably weren't going to look for food, and we would have never evolved. We would have died as a species. So that's what dopamine actually does for us. And there is a normal dopamine response. So when we eat the food, we get this tiny little release of dopamine, we get mild pleasure, and then we desire food again. Okay? That's what makes us eat. Now, unfortunately, how we eat from, even probably 30 years ago is different, but how we eat from 100 years ago or 200 years ago is significantly different, in part because of how we manufacture food. If you look at this now, right? So most of us we can remember back into the 60s or the 70s, there was probably very little processed food in your home, correct? I mean, mom or grandma, they made stuff. I remember it was a big deal to have store-bought bread, right? Bread was made in the home. Going to school and getting school lunch that had like the Wonder Bread in it was like, wow, this bread is really different, right? So back in the day, there just weren't as many of the pre-product or pre-packaged convenience types of food in our home. Now, as life got busier and life changed, we have more of those products. We have typically less availability. We don't have as many gardens, right? I remember both as kids, both sides of the family had huge gardens where I came from. Perhaps you remember some of those. So there were times where we even grew some of our own food, right? And most of us don't do that as often as anymore. Okay. So our food has started to change. And in that food, what they've done is they have concentrated sugar or flour. They want us to come back to the store and buy that food, because if they can make an impression on us, we're going to keep that in our brain. Think back, when I was a kid, like our big treat, something we just did not get very often, was Ruffles potato chips, right? Okay, Ruffles with the ridges, and sour cream and onion dip. And I tell you, that was like a huge treat, right? And we'd sit down and we'd get it every once in a while and we'd share it as a family. As I'm telling you this, the taste buds in my mouth, I can taste the salt. My mouth is getting a little bit dry. I can taste the creaminess of the sour cream and onion dip. I can hear the chips cracking, right? And I can feel the crunch. That was a response that I got from that food. And that was a response, that's from my childhood. I'm 56 years old. I can honestly tell you, I don't remember the last time I had chip and dip. Oh God, probably 10 plus years or so. But those are the things that we remember. So food and our senses leave these indelible imprints on our brain. And that's what causes some of the cravings that we have. Think to yourself, what are some of those things that you either smell or think about and you can automatically taste them and they transport you back to a different place in time? My family was Italian. My family is Italian. We always cook sauce at home. I make sauce, right? And whenever I put up sauce, and it starts with some olive oil in the bottom of the pan and garlic and onions, and they saute for 5 minutes together, right? When I smell that smell, I don't care if it's in my house or my mom's house, or if I came to your house and smelled that smell, my brain is going back to my childhood. That's how powerful these messages are in our brain. And if you remember back to the very first time that we spoke, I said we have 30 to 40,000 thoughts that go through our brain on a daily basis. We don't think about everything that goes through our brain, yet some of these things we react on. And this is one of those things that we react on. So in foods today, in a lot of our packaged foods, it creates an over desire response because there's these concentrated amounts of sugar. So instead of a little dopamine release, we get a big dopamine release. Instead of a little bit of pleasure, we get lots of pleasure. And now we're craving that similar food. I just can't live without fill in the blank, whatever it is. That's the physical reaction that food has on our system. So how do we start to eliminate some of those? The tactic that I want to share with you is reading labels. Now you probably, who already reads labels? Put a thumbs up if you already read labels. Okay, let me ask you this. Did you know that the nutrition labels changed in January 2020? Put a thumbs up if you knew that they changed. Okay, all right, okay, cool, good. I'm glad that you know they changed. If you didn't, this is going to be something new. If not, this is going to be a little bit of review. Now, not every nutrition label has changed. The FDA has given different industries a segment of time to change all the labels over. Some changed in January, some have to change by July. The rest have to change by next January. So there are a couple big changes that happened to make this easier for us to read. So the first one really happens up at the top, and it talks about serving sizes. So labels were not always clear, as you can see by the one on the left. You really had to look close to see how many servings, what the serving size was, and how many servings per container there were in that. You notice now it has to be big and bold, and they have changed places, so it's more noticeable. Another thing that they've done, food marketers were using serving size to really deceive us. So as an example, you remember the pot pies we had when we were a kid? They were pretty big, right? The frozen pot pies, the single pot pies. So the banquet, single serving. If you went to the store prior to this label change and bought a banquet pot pie, and you picked it up, you're going to assume that that's one serving, right? I mean, you really wouldn't look at serving size. It's an individual serving size. Previous to this label change, if it was less than 3 servings, they didn't have to change that label. They didn't have to note it on, or they had to note it on, let me rephrase that. Previous to this, if it was less than 3 serving sizes, they could list it as 3 serving sizes. Now under the new label changes, if it's less than 3 servings in a package, it has to be listed as 1 serving size. Because what Banquet would do is they would list it as 2 servings with calories of 438 calories per serving, right? So you grab this thinking it's 1 serving, right? All your intelligence tells you it's 1. You turn around, you probably don't even look at the number of servings because you sure wouldn't think that in a single serving package that they're going to be 2 servings. You'd look at the calories, say, oh, 430 calories, that's not so bad. When in actuality, it was 860 calories. Okay, they can't do that anymore. So if it's less than 3 servings, it has to be listed as a single serving now. Okay.
Because didn't that also affect things like, like a can of pop would be reasonably assumed to be 1 serving, and yet they would call it 2 or 3?
Exactly.
Just to make the numbers look better.
Yes, exactly.
Half a can of pop,
Yep. Same thing. You hit the nail on the head. Yep. Make the numbers look better. So that's one of the big changes on the servings that you'll see. Now remember, not every label has been changed yet. Okay, just a certain grouping. The next thing you notice is the calories definitely stand out. They're a lot larger here. Still the same would be your fats. Those really haven't changed. And you know, we're not going to dive deep into this today, but what I want to say is just remember this. We need dietary fat. Fat is good for us. Healthy fats help our cellular processes. Healthy fats would be like things from nuts and oils. What we do want to stay away from would be the saturated and the trans fats. Those are still separated out in the same way as they were previously. So you definitely still want to stay away from things that are high in saturated or trans fat. Natural fats, that's okay. If you have cholesterol issues or sodium, nothing here really has changed again, but you're gonna you would have more attention on those particular items, but nothing's changed in the two labels. What has changed is in terms of sugar, and I think this is the change for the good. So you can see the change or over on the other side, over on the left side, with total carbohydrates. And all you used to be able to see was dietary fibers and then sugars. You never could see what was a natural sugar for a product versus what was an added sugar for a product. In the new labeling, you'll notice that it shows total sugars, and then it says included 10 grams of added sugar, okay? Natural sugar is not a bad thing for us, okay? And what it does to our bodies, it does similar things, but it's very different in terms of the dopamine response and our glycemic index and all these things that happen inside of our bodies. So natural sugars do it to an extent, but not the way that added sugars do it for us. So as you're looking at sugar, we're trying to avoid our large amounts of added sugar, okay? And if you'll notice in this particular packaging example, we have 10 grams of added sugar. So 10 grams per serving. There's 8 servings per container in this particular product. So in total, there's 80 grams of added sugar. If you're, as all gals on here, it's 25 grams a day. If you ate this whole box, this is 3 days worth of sugar in just whatever's in this particular meal. Okay, so that's a really nice factor to have, is to see what's added sugar. A couple other things, they have finally changed some of, you'll notice on the bottom it says vitamin D. We have more of a vitamin D deficiency now for a variety of reasons, but you'll notice that they're listing vitamin D versus vitamins A and C. That goes way, way, way back into the 50s, you know, scurvy and all those things, you know, back eons ago when those vitamins were more important. And they've learned a lot about those vitamins since. Don't even get me started on A and C, because we just can't absorb the amounts that are in, like as an example, that are in our multivitamins. We can't absorb those. That's what science has shown now, and the labeling and things like that are kind of slow to catch up. So at least this is a good start. Another one is potassium. So you're seeing different ingredients listed than you did previously, and that's because of the nutritional studies and what they've shown is important to our bodies. Okay.
So do all the labels show the same vitamins and minerals? Yes. Regardless of, even if they don't have any, it'll still show vitamin D?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Great question. Shirley, you had a question?
How come protein doesn't have a percentage?
Protein has never had a percentage. It's always been done in grams. And I think in large part, that's because the amount of protein that somebody gets in their body, there's not necessarily a recommended daily amount as there would be a vitamin.
Why not?
Well, great question. I think because that varies by person. And my personal belief is that we have not put enough emphasis on protein. And I am going to talk about protein when we talk about protein shakes. My belief is you should be trying to get 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal. Most people don't get that. Most people are probably down into the 50 grams of protein per meal. Now, again, I want to say that this is kind of in a normal diet. If you happen to have issues where you can't have a lot of protein, right? You know, maybe you have some kidney issues or you've got some other underlying medical conditions going on, you need to follow those your dietary instructions there. This is kind of like a general, I'm a healthy person looking at a healthy diet. Okay, Helen.
Will your protein recommendation be on one of the slides?
It's not. It's not.
And you said it was what?
25 to 30 grams. Personally, I get 30 grams a meal is what I'm shooting for. So I'm looking roughly, I'm looking at 90 grams of protein a day. Helen, you had a question?
Yes, I'm looking at the percentages
Uh-huh.
and I'm wondering what they add up to. They don't add up to 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the purpose of the percentages?
So the percentages are your daily value. And again, that's based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. In a 2,000 calorie a day diet, they have the recommended daily allowances of different vitamins. Okay. And that is the percentage in this particular product. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
The percentage of the recommended daily amount.
Yes, exactly. The percentage of the recommended daily amount, which is based on 2,000 calories, which is generally more than we are probably going to eat at this stage in our lives. We're probably not eating 2,000 calories a day. Okay.
So going back, the total carbohydrates, 37 grams is only 13% of the recommended daily value for carbohydrates.
Yeah, so what they've done again, and this is based on, again, so they have qualifications that are standard American diet, and I can give those to you. They have, I forget the exact number that they use as a percentage of carbohydrates on a 2,000 calorie diet, but they'll be your macronutrients. So you've got fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Okay, those are the three things that make up your macronutrients, which is what your body needs a lot of. And that's based on, there's 13% in one serving based on a 2,000 calorie diet. I'm not making sense. I can see by your, I tell you what, I will post an article for you that'll explain it better than I will.
Okay.
What I would tell you is this, what makes more sense to how we apply this into our diet is I would focus more on the number of grams and less on the percentages.
I know I was on a eating plan for a while to try to drop some weight, and it worked really well. And I had very specific number of grams for those 3 macros that I tried to hit. And a lot of diets seem to be that way now. And it depends on what your goal is, how the 3 are weighted.
Yeah, exactly. So you would have a floating percentage of those 3 macros, right? And when I say floating percentage, I don't mean you have that. You would pick a diet. It's typically a diet that's going to say, as an example, somewhere probably between 40 and 60% of your diet is carbohydrates. Okay, that's fairly typical. Depending upon where you were, you would say, okay, 45% of my diet is going to be carbohydrates. If I'm eating, let's say 1,600 calories a day, 45% of that 1,600 would be my amount of carbohydrates. And that is getting down to, if you're really looking to lose weight, that's where you need to go, is to manage your macronutrients. I'm going to stop this screen share just for a second, just to make sure. I don't know if Patricia or Alexis, if you guys are doing okay, or if you have any questions, because I can't see everybody in the screen at the same time. Okay.
Fine.
Oh, Patricia, I know I can't hear. I see you talking. You're going to have to unmute.
Oh, okay. You hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So that is saying that is 2/3 cup is one serving, and all of the figures relate to that one serving.
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, that
So,
could throw.
yeah. So if you were going to eat the whole package, let's just say we're eating the whole package, that there were 8 servings in that package, you need to multiply everything
That's
times 8.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just writing down my notes to make sure I get you.
So like I tend to look mostly at the carbs because that's my downfall. And so like when I looked at those ones you put up there, I immediately went, that's got to be cereal because it just looks like the numbers for a box of cereal.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it could be. It's from the organization where I'm a personal trainer. So it's one of our slides just to do a comparison. So it definitely could be it could be cereal. But let's, as an example, take a carton of yogurt. And when I say yogurt, I mean like fruit on the bottom yogurt. Just a typical fruit on the bottom yogurt, you're going to see numbers in the carbohydrates of generally somewhere between 20 and 27 grams of carbohydrates in a fruit on the bottom yogurt. Those typically are very, very high in sugars. Okay. All right, cool. Anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to go back. All right. Let me go back here and start resharing this again. Okay. Come on, where were we? Okay. So that's the first part of the equation, right? So start to get used to looking at the added sugars. If you're going to do a couple of things, turn it over, look at the number of servings in it, and start to look at the carbohydrates, start to notice the added sugars, okay? And ask yourself the question, does this product need added sugars? Why does this product have added sugars, okay? Because the next thing you need to do is you need to look down at the ingredient list. Now, this is just off a Quaker Chewy granola bar, right? Something probably everybody has seen. Not the best things in the world, and we will talk a little bit about energy bars because I know there were some questions on that, but please remember when it comes to ingredients, ingredients are listed in the package in order of content. So the very first ingredient listed is the highest content in that particular food. So granola is first, followed by followed by the crispy rice, the whole grain, the rolled oats. Okay, and in parentheses is saying what's in the crispy rice, what's in the granola. What you want to look for when you start to do these, here's a real simple thing for you is this, is you want to look for sugars. Now, the University of California, San Francisco has a sugar science department, which is outstanding. And I go to them because they do a lot of research on people, on foods. I mean, they are just the latest up to date. They had their last listing was 65 new names for sugar. Okay. Since then, I saw somebody else, the Canadian, their Canadian equivalent has 71 names for sugar. So the names for sugar are just increasing. So they can be really hard to pick out. But here's one big thing to take a look for is anytime you see the suffix OSE. So if you look down polydextrose, the sucralose, anytime you see an OSE on something, that's sugar. Okay, so just know that is sugar in your brain. In fact, everything in here that's in red is some type of sugar. If you see sugar in the first 5 ingredients, pass. Find something else. Okay? That would be kind of a general, I can look at the back of the package, I can read the ingredients. If I see sugar or something that I think is sugar in the first 5 ingredients, find something else. You will start to cut down on your added sugars just by doing that one little move. So this can be a huge, huge strategy for you. Okay. Okay. And I think, okay. So, so one of the things that you asked about was energy bars. And I pulled this example up because some people may think that this is a good energy bar, or maybe that this is a good thing to give to a kid, right? So when it comes to energy bars, in this day and age, energy bars right now, most quote unquote energy bars look like candy bars. They look more like candy bars than they really do anything that's good for us. And as pickleball players, there's a lot of times where we're going out on the courts and maybe we need a little something before we go. We haven't had a chance to eat, or that type of thing. So when it comes to energy bars, protein powders, and I will talk more specifically about protein powders in a bit. One of the things that I've chosen to do is I've chosen to align myself. I look for companies who are going to be consistent in the foods that they produce. Because sometimes it can be hard to go into the grocery aisle and start flipping these over and reading labels. You're going to get confused. So what I recommend to you is to look for companies who are using quality foods, quality ingredients, quality production, and who are putting out products in a similar vein. So as an example, one of the companies that I did my homework on quite a while ago is a company called Vega. It's V like Victor, EGA. They are all vegan products. I specifically was looking for sports products. I was looking for electrolyte powders. I was looking for recovery drinks. I was looking for those types of things. So when I started looking at the company and how the company formulated products in all of those types of categories. And so when I'm buying, whether it's an energy bar or my electrolyte powders or my protein powders, I typically, that's kind of like one of my go-to companies, right? So I think there's several good go-to companies out there, right? And you may have a different one that you've already researched. But if you align with a company, it makes your homework a little bit easier that you don't have to say, okay, now I need an energy bar. Now I need a protein product. Now I need those types of things, right? I'm going to just go back here for just one quick second. We got a little bit of background noise, so I'm just going to mute, and we can all unmute after that. So I think there's real value in looking at some of those companies and saying, this is a company that manufactures things that are, hang on one second, Patricia, I'm going to mute you, okay? Okay, there we go. We can always unmute after that. I think there's real value in looking for companies that do those types of things. And Vega's just one of several different companies that bring those to the forefront. Because right now, there's a lot of junk in your energy bars. There's a lot of junk in protein powders. There's a lot of junk in some electrolyte drinks. So you need to do, as with anything, you need to do a little bit of homework. I want to specifically talk about energy bars. There is one other store brand, and this is kind of a generality. There's one other store brand that I like, that I personally like. It's the Think line, T-H-I-N-K. They tend to use in their energy bars, they do have a plant-based energy bar. They have whey-based energy bars as well. They use sugar alcohols, and sugar alcohols don't impact our bodies the same way regular sugar does. It's a pretty common bar that you can find in most grocery stores. It is, it's got quite a bit of protein, generally somewhere between 20 and 25 grams of protein. It's relatively low in calories, 200 to 230 calories in a bar. They taste good. So that's a grocery store brand that I think is a nice grocery store brand. In general, stay away from the big brands like the Cliff bars. Those tend to get a little bit more like candy bars. In particular, the Gatorade bars. Actually, Gatorade has a high performance series that they make that can be purchased online. Their high performance series is outstanding, but it's also built for endurance athletes, so it has a lot of calories in it. We're probably not gonna consume those kind of calories playing pickleball. So again, part of that is, I hate to sound kind of mystic, but do a little bit of homework and see what fits for you. The Think bars are good. Another one, there's a new energy bar out. It's a 6 ingredient bar. I don't eat them because they contain eggs and egg whites, and not whole eggs. They contain eggs in most of their bar. I don't eat eggs. They use natural sweeteners, so like dates oftentimes in their products are sweeteners. They're relatively clean. That bar is pretty clean as well. So there are some clean alternatives out there. Yeah, and 1 second, Shirley. There are some clean alternatives out there. So you probably have to do a little bit of homework to find out. But you could start with Think, you could start with Vega, stay away from the big brands. Another generality is a good energy bar. As an example, that Think bar is probably going to be somewhere around the $2 a bar area. The Vega is probably going to be somewhere around the $3 a bar area. One other thing that I recommend is, especially if you're going to use these to go out and play some pickleball, you don't necessarily always need the whole bar. Maybe it's only half a bar, right? Have half a bar at the beginning and then maybe have half a bar later if you're still hungry. We're going to talk about that mental part of being hungry. Go ahead, Shirley, you had a question.
Well, I don't know if I can ask it well enough right now. You mentioned Think line, but then you were talking about another bar that has limited ingredients and egg whites. And was that the Think line bar?
That's not Think, that's another bar. I can get the name of that bar for you. I don't know it offhand because, like I said, I don't eat it, but I know which one it is.
So I tend to buy protein bars, not energy bars. And when I look at the labels, the difference is the carbs.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. The difference is the carbs. And the other thing that you'll probably see would be the sugar alcohol. In protein bars, you're going to probably see more sugar alcohols used versus regular sugars.
Yeah, because I'm usually looking not for the energy, but more as a meal replacement on the go kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay.
Yeah.
So make sure, because if you, it's easy to go, oh, I'm just going to go grab an energy bar, and then you look at the label and you're like, wow, there's a lot of sugar or carbs in this thing. And that's because of energy. But if you don't need that,
right,
then a lot of wasted carbs.
It is, and most of the time, quite frankly, for the way we play pickleball, we don't need it.
Right.
We don't need it. We'd be better off getting something that has a little bit more protein to fill us up before we actually play. Okay. Questions? Okay. All right. So I want to jump back here. I want to jump back and I'm going to share this screen again. All right. So there we go. All right. Second point here is separating. So I told you the first point was quick hit to help you to eliminate some of the extra calories in your diet. Because and it's important for us because as we age, if we do not practice caloric restriction, which means eat less, we are going to get heavier. If there's one thing that science has shown is the older we get, the less calories our body that we need. If you keep eating the same amount as you age, you are going to put on weight. That's just how our bodies are built. So the sugar, taking some of that sugar out of your diet is a great way to do it without a lot of pain. Now, the second part that, and I talked about this in the beginning, is separating emotion and food. So what I want you to think about for just a second is when I say food is fuel for your body, what do you think? Grab on to whatever that first thought is that came into your mind. Now, for most of us, if you hit me with food is fuel for my body when I was 38 years old and I weighed over 250 pounds, I would have told you food is supposed to be enjoyed. How can I go out with friends and not have food? And how can I do this without food? And how can I do that without food? It has taken me a long time to get to food is fuel for my body. And it doesn't matter where you are. If you thought something similar to what I did when I was 38, or if you're like, no, food is fuel for my body, we probably have this inner dialogue going on, making food fuel for our body all the time because we have that strong sense of smell and brain and remembering that even though I haven't had those potato chips in how many years, I can go back to that right away. And we're processing 30 to 40,000 thoughts in our brain a day. We don't act on all of those. Sometimes, right? How many times have you said to yourself, all of a sudden you're in the kitchen and you're inside a bag of something and you don't know why? Okay? You're acting on something underneath. So I think if there's one huge key to success, it's separating emotion and food. And I think in our society, this is incredibly difficult because we tie them together, right? You've probably already heard the things going around about COVID-19 being like the freshman 15, right? People are putting on weight. Why are people putting on weight? We're closer to food, we're stressed, we're maybe angry, we're concerned about our finances, we're not as active as we want to be. There's a lot of emotional things that are going into it right now. And many times we pacify ourselves with food. And that's the real, if you want to ask me what's changed for me, is to make a very conscious effort to separate emotion from food. And, you know, one of the things we do really deep in Fit After 50 is we go into a thought model that we use, that we apply to our eating to make sure that we're making the conscious right decisions. And I don't have the time to go into depth here as deeply as I can, but I want to give you some tools to begin to separate that out, okay? And the tool that I teach is the hunger scale. And I kind of alluded to this hunger scale in the very first time that we got together. And asking myself, if I can start to recognize, when am I hungry? When am I really hungry? That's when it's time to eat. Because most of us, myself included, don't eat when we're just hungry. We eat for a variety of different reasons, okay? So the tool that I use first is the hunger scale. In this hunger scale, 0 is neutral, means I don't feel hungry, I don't feel full. I feel nothing, right? When it comes to, I don't notice my stomach, I don't notice anything. I'm just completely satisfied, okay? And not completely satisfied is the wrong word, because I apologize. I use that for our fullness. I feel neutral. I feel nothing one way or the other. Let's go to the negative side first, which are going to be the yellow numbers. So as I start to get hungry is number 1, I notice hunger. Okay. I would tell you, as I'm sitting here right now, I'm not at 0. I notice a little bit of hunger. Okay. Okay. Wow. I'm a little hungry. 2 is in my mind, I'm hungry. It's probably time to get something to eat. 3 is, wow, I'm hungry. Okay. I need to get something to eat. I used to have a friend, we'd call her kind of where she got hangry, right? Where you knew that you had this limited amount of time that you needed to get her some food. That's 3. 4 is, oh my God, I have got to have something to eat now. I don't usually get to number 4. Sometimes I do when I'm working out. If I do some hiking, some real strenuous hikes where we're going up really high, then I may get to really where I'm to the point of being ravenous. That usually happens when I am highly active. It doesn't normally happen to me in my daily activity. I'm usually doing something beyond that. Now on the other side of the scale, 1 is I'm satisfied. I've eaten. I'm full. I feel good. 2 is, ooh, okay, that's enough. Okay, I hit my capacity. That's enough. I'm really good. I don't feel uncomfortable, but I certainly don't need any more. Number 3 is, wow, I'm stuffed. Maybe that's that Thanksgiving feeling. Okay, is I've just eaten too much food, or I went to the buffet and I ate everything on my plate. And 4, I think we've all probably been there at some point in time or the other where something just tasted so good and we just overate and didn't even notice we were overeating. And before you know it, we were like, oh my God, I feel awful. I have eaten way too much. So on this hunger scale, my suggestion to you would be to not eat until you're a -2, which is hungry. Okay, not just, oh, I noticed that I'm hungry. Not eat until you're a -2, and to stop somewhere between 1 and 2. Okay, I will generally stop eating for a while when I get to number 1, and I'll stop and I won't eat for a while, and I'll think, do I need more? Am I truly full? I give myself enough time to answer the question, am I satisfied? Do I have to have more, or am I good? So perhaps for you, that might be before you have a second helping, right? How am I feeling? Where am I? Am I at a 1 or am I at a 2? So if you can start to learn not to eat until you're at a 2 and stop eating when you're between a 1 and a 2, you're going to cut down naturally on the amount of food that you begin to eat. You're also going to create a thought awareness of when do I need food? Because most of the time what starts to happen is we have issues around snacking and food and eating. And a lot of the things that came up, we asked some questions about, and I just want to get them right. We asked some questions about snacking, healthy snacks, healthy snacks, breakfast or no breakfast, intermittent fasting came up, eating late at night. So those are all, to me, are all timing things. And here's what I would tell you is eat when you're hungry. And here are the questions to ask yourself before you decide if you are going to have a snack or something to eat. So the very first thing that I ask myself is, number 1, am I thirsty? Thirst masks itself as hunger. All right. So if I look at the clock and I say to myself, I'm hungry, right? I just told you I'm hungry. I would look back at the clock and say, should I be hungry? If it has been longer than 3 hours since I've eaten something, chances are I may be hungry. If it's less than 3 hours since I've eaten something, probably thirsty. Okay. So I would tell you this, I ate lunch early today because I wasn't real hungry at breakfast. So I just waited and I had lunch. I had lunch at 11 o'clock. So it is now, 3-ish o'clock my time. Okay. If I'm hungry, I probably am hungry. I've also been drinking a fair amount. So I've kind of eliminated the thirsty question for myself. So I'm still at a number 1. I'm not going to get up and I'm not going to eat. Not at this point in time. I'll get there when I get to a 2. Another question to ask yourself is this, are you craving something specific? If you are craving something specific, that's your head. That's your head telling you need this food. That's not your body. Okay? That's your head telling you need that particular food. Okay? So be very, very careful when you're craving something, when you're craving something specific. Most of the time that's up here. Another thing is, do you eat when you're hungry or do you eat out of habit? You just heard me say, I didn't have breakfast. It's not because I'm not intermittent fasting. It's because I'm not hungry. I wasn't hungry. So I didn't eat. I ate when I was hungry, which happened to be at 11 o'clock. Do you eat at 12 o'clock because you're hungry? Or do you eat at 12 o'clock because that's the time you get to eat? Have you trained yourself to eat at that point in time? Is it habit? My challenge to you would be to eat more when you're hungry and less out of habit. I have a cat who just climbed off her perch and came down to sit next to me because we're getting close to dinner time. Now, she doesn't know what time it is, but she does this every single day, right? I feed her like I feed a dog, right? So I feed her. she comes down here and she starts to sit, and now her behavior, she may pop in here at any point in time. She sits by me first, and then she comes over and starts nudging me, and then after a while she starts swatting at me, letting me know that it's time for her dinner. When I feed her, I get up in the morning and I feed her in the morning. I feed her somewhere around 5 to 5:30 in the morning. When my husband gets up, which is typically an hour to two after me, she sees him come down. She's not hungry. She just ate 2 hours ago. She sees him come down, but she knows she can tweak him into giving her some wet food. So she sits there and she starts to meow at him. That's habit, right? We sometimes do. I know it sounds simplistic, but we sometimes do the exact same things out of habit. Oh, I have a snack every night at 7, or I do this here, or I do that here. My challenge would be to yourself is ask yourself the questions, do you need to have that? Is that something that you're really hungry for? Or is it something that's become a habit? And separate those out from the emotions. That hunger scale is designed to help you to be able to do that. Now, it takes thought and it takes work, but it's designed to help you to be able to do that. Okay. So I know I had a couple more questions coming up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop that screen share. I know there are a few more questions, and I still have, we still have some time to take more questions. I know you had some questions about protein powder and also some questions about healthy snacks, and I'll share those with you in just a second. But go ahead, and do you have questions on anything we've talked about, or we'll go from there? Okay, I see Shirley with a hand up. Go ahead, Shirley, unmute yourself.
Sorry. So what do you suggest we do when we have cravings for a specific food?
Okay, so what I use is I use a tool called Thought Downloads. And this takes some time and this takes some effort. Is I start to write, why am I craving that food? What's going on? And I start to try to separate out the emotion from the craving. There's something behind it. So when you have a craving for a specific food, grab a pen and paper and just start writing. Why are you craving that specific food? What's happening? What's the thought that's going on inside of your brain? And the more you write about it, the more you'll start to see patterns developing. They might be habit, generally they're emotions. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think sometimes I crave sugar just because I'm tired. So I want to, it's not time to go to bed yet, and I want a little bit of energy, sugar boost, and so I'll crave some sugar just to get me through the next couple hours before bedtime. So there's not emotion involved, but unless there is, and I don't realize it.
I think sometimes there is. I'm not saying that there is. I think oftentimes until we really start to try and separate them out, emotions got really tied up in that. The other thing could be sometimes we crave sugar because we eat too much sugar. As an example, I will tell you, I always tell everybody I have a sweet tooth. I haven't met a piece of chocolate that I don't like. Here's what I'll tell you. When I don't eat chocolate, guess what? I don't crave chocolate. Your body keeps feeding those cravings. So the more sugar or aspartame, so aspartame is, a sweetener, those artificial sweeteners tend to also kick our sugar cravings into overdrive. So there can be a lot of reasons that you're craving sugar. There can be physical reasons, as you mentioned, but there also can be the emotional ones. So sometimes it's a matter of starting to write and being able to separate those out. Cool. Lori.
Can you talk a little bit about coffee versus tea versus, I use it sometimes because I feel like I can go longer without eating because it sort of fills me up, but I don't know if it's got negative things other than the dehydrating of caffeine that I know it does.
Yeah, there's this really interesting article that came out a while ago about why food studies change so often. And one of the things that's changed a lot and changes over time is coffee's good for you, coffee's bad for you, tea's better. This is, on and on. Still, what they're showing in terms of science is I'm an advocate of moderation. Okay. So one of the things inside coffee, caffeine can have different effects on different bodies, right? So to take caffeine inside with moderation, that can also have the caffeine and the coffee can dehydrate us. So to me, I try to balance, and caffeine doesn't really bother me personally. I'm not one of those people that like, oh, you can tell I had 5 cups of coffee. You know the people I'm talking about, right? And I used to have a boss that I would say, you get 2 cups of coffee a day and you get no more. You get nothing beyond that because we got to peel you off the ceiling. Seriously, he was something. So the people that it can really affect. It does not affect my body that way. Okay. So nor does it necessarily affect my body in terms of sleep at night. Okay. That has that impact with some people. So what I say is with that is everything in moderation. I also, as far as tea goes, I think there are a lot of good things about teas, just some of the herbal teas that are out there. Again, tea with caffeine, like the Earl Greys and things like that, can have those same caffeine type side effects. But teas like, I have an herbal tea called Throat Coat that I like. I also do an herbal tea. I have a sleepy time once in a while towards the end of the day. And to me, that's just additional water into my system. So I don't know if I really answered your question as much to say as moderation when it comes to that. I believe that it counts as liquid that we drink. Now you talk to somebody else and they'll say, no, anything with caffeine in it doesn't count. Well, I believe that when we get water from tea or water from coffee or water from our food, right? Because we get water. If you eat fruit, you get water from fruit. If we get water from that, our body does something with it. Our body absorbs it and it helps with the dehydration. So I'm not sure if I answered that. Maybe a little bit. Were you looking for something more specific?
No, that was good. I was just curious because I didn't used to drink coffee and then I started drinking coffee, and I'm just wondering if there's anything I'm not aware of about it that I should take into account or, okay.
The only thing I would say is making sure too that when it's coffee, it's just coffee. I mean, the one thing that I want to separate out is coffee drinks, right? Which, the coffee drinks, the Starbucks, those types of things, those are incredibly high in sugar.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The other question I have, and it's not exactly on diet, but I'll throw it out there, and if you need to think about it, or we can do it offline, is I've seen lots of ads and kind of pushes on different social media things about hormonal based exercise programs. That there's hormone types out there, and there's certain things you should do if you're this type versus a different type. Is there anything to any of that, considering we're all of an age?
You know what? I will tell you, I don't know enough about that to have an opinion one way or the other. I will tell you this. I've done some insight into, if you remember a few years ago, the blood type diet was really big, that you should eat certain foods if you're a certain blood type. I would say on that, I didn't see enough evidence to really get my attention to delve deeper into it.
Right. I was just curious. Obviously, supposedly there's some test you take to figure out what type you are, and then it drives you down a different path. But I was just curious if you knew anything about it. So, okay.
I'm a big advocate when you talk about that. I'm a big advocate of, as we grow older, that we continue to strength train.
Right.
Cool. Other questions? Because I still owe you 2 answers to 2 questions. One was the protein powders. And this was the group that was healthy foods for tournaments. Okay. Protein powders would be similar to what I suggested about the energy bar. Generally, in a protein powder, I really want somewhere around 25 to 30 grams of protein. There are different types of protein. There would be a whey-based protein, which is, as an example, would come from, that's an animal protein. It's pretty common. It's not super expensive. It's a healthy way to get your protein. Another way would be rice and pea proteins tend to be the more common non-animal based proteins. When you look for a protein powder, it's really the same to me as when you're looking for an energy bar. You're looking for something that's low in sugar. Okay, lower in sugar and lower in carbohydrates. Most of us are really not looking for something to help us build big muscle, you know, as maybe like a 25 or 30-year-old bodybuilder, male or female, would be looking to help us to build muscle. We're probably looking just for something to supplement inside of our diet. Again, I would look for a company that is in line with your values. And generally, companies make sports performance products. So they probably have a bar, some electrolytes, some recovery products, as well as some protein powders. So I would really look for a company that does that kind of eliminates some of your research. And I definitely would tell you, I've done the research on Vega. I think they're a good company. That would be one of the companies that I would research if you're looking for some products in that particular vein, and see if they're a fit for you.
Question?
Yep, go right ahead.
Do you need to take a protein powder every day? Is it part of your regular routine? When do you take it?
Great question. I use protein powders to help me to get enough protein in my diet and stay full. So as an example, so one of the things you talked about in terms of snacks, protein helps to keep us full. Okay, that's one of the side things of protein. I do use a protein powder probably almost every day because typically my breakfast foods don't always have a lot of protein in it. I would put protein powder in I use almond milk yogurt. I put protein powder in almond milk yogurt. I might have a small shake as a snack, right? I might take a protein powder and just maybe even a half a scoop with some oat milk or some water in it. And that's a filling snack for me. You know, I can do that for under 100 calories. If I'm hungry and I really wanted some type of healthy snack. Some people have shakes for breakfast, right? That's how I'm on the go and I want to start off my day with a breakfast. You don't have to use protein powders, but if you're having a challenge getting enough protein inside of your diet, it can be an easy way to help to supplement them. I do carry a protein powder in my pickleball bag. So I just take a shaker bottle with a scoop of protein in it so that if I'm really hungry when I'm on the courts, you know, I ate okay, but I got there and I'm really kind of hungry, I have something that I could eat that's relatively healthy. And compared to a bar, bars can melt.
Yeah, I do the shaker bottle with the protein, maybe about 8 ounces of water, and for lunch, and then I'll have like a celery sticks or something with it. But yeah, it fills me up.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Casey,
Yeah, Alexis. Yep.
I think in our first meeting, you talked about a flavored protein powder that you really liked, and
Yep.
it was salted caramel. Is
Yep.
that one of the Vega ones?
That is not one of the Vega ones. That's actually Sprouts. Sprouts. Now I don't know that Sprouts is a grocery store. So
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I know it's a West Coast based store. I don't know. Lori, do you have Sprouts in?
I don't think so.
It's kind of like a Trader Joe's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't heard of it.
We have Sprouts in Pacifica.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a drive, but when I'm going down the coast, I'm
Yep.
going to stop because I love salted caramel.
Yep. It's from Sprouts.
Okay. Where do you buy the Vega stuff?
Vega, I purchase online.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah, Vega I purchase online, and they have some pretty good deals. I mean, sometimes you might see some things where they have 2 energy boxes, 2 bars of energy, or buy 2 boxes, get a box for free of energy bars, or, you know, buy a tub of this and get that. So, and you can kind of get all different sizes to see if you actually like it, so that you don't get stuck with something that isn't pleasing to your palate. Cool. That is also, because I know this question came out about recovery products. So I use Vega electrolytes, as well as they have a recovery product, which is pretty much, it's all carbs. Now it's still fairly low in calories, but there are times, not so much after pickleball that I need it, after something a little bit more strenuous. Now I will say this, if I'm playing pickleball singles, I may need it after playing pickleball singles. But it is a recovery drink that has a lot of carbohydrates, because after you're done expending your energy, you want to replace some of the carbohydrates. And then the other thing I try to do is get a little bit of protein in my body so that I fill myself up.
CJ, what is the address for this Vega online?
I tell you what, I will post it, because I think it's My Vega, I think is what it is.
Oh, my Vega.
I think,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's My
Okay.
Vega. And it will ask you if you are American or Canadian. This company was started by a fellow by the name of Brandon Fraser, and he was a endurance, 100-miler, 50-miler athlete. And he started this company probably 15 years ago now. He decided that amongst those elite athletes, that the only thing that really separated them was diet. And he believed that he needed to get more of his protein from plants. And 15 years ago, that was pretty damn hard to do.
Yeah.
And so he started a company around it.
I see.
Yeah. And he's Canadian. So it started in Canada, but they also have a division in the States. And you can see it, you can get it online, but you can also get it like Whole Foods carries it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Whole Foods does carry it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did I get everybody? Okay, we got a couple more questions. Go ahead, Alexis. I see.
I was wondering, what's your opinion on intermittent fasting?
It's kind of the same. I would tell you this, the jury is out on it. I mean, but it also falls in line with and when I say the jury is out, I mean, scientifically, the jury is out on it. What I believe is it falls in line with the hunger scale, which is eat when you're hungry. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with being a little bit hungry. And sometimes I struggle with being a little hungry, right? I'm like, oh my God, I got to get something to eat. I've never been without food, right? I don't know that. That's not my story. But my body reacts and my brain reacts to that, like, oh my God, when's my next meal going to come, right? How many times I've said to myself, well, you know what? I need to eat now. I'm not hungry. I need to eat now because I don't know when I'm going to get to eat again. Seriously?
Yeah.
If I'm hungry, yeah, I've got options. Okay. So I would say follow into the eat when you're hungry. That would be my advice. I will also say there may be some long-term things coming out about intermittent fasting. There's one of the new research that is happening right now. You know how we were told to eat lots of little meals throughout the course of the day? Well, what's tending to happen is because we're eating those little meals, our bodies keep releasing those food chemicals all the time. So we end up never really knowing when we're hungry, and our bodies never cycle through and cycle down. So I'm going to say that's starting to make a little bit of sense, although I haven't seen the science part of that yet.
I think they've done a lot of research in England on intermittent fasting.
So
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? Our bodies are all different. What works for one person doesn't always necessarily work for another. But I think when it comes to monitoring food, really the best advice I can do is eat when you're hungry. Okay, hang on one second. My battery is running low, which means as I came here, I unplugged. Yes, I did. There we go. I'm like, okay, we better fix that right away. Okay. Other questions? Helen, did you have a question?
Sure, I got one. Fermented foods. What's the, where are you, what's with fermented foods?
Oh, man. I would tell you this. Again, that's not one of those things that I've done a ton of research on. I know there's a group out there that really believes in that type of eating. And I think that our bodies are uniquely different. And if that's something that works for you, I think that's great. I really don't, I haven't done enough on it to really have an opinion one way or the other.
Okay.
What about you? Is it something that you're using?
I've tried it, but I don't like those foods. But I do know an expert in the field, and if others are interested, I'd be happy to share that information in the community.
Yep. And as I would tell you too, so my basis is I'm a certified weight management specialist. I'm also a certified personal trainer. I've done some extensive research on food. I'm not a nutritionist. Okay. So I don't label myself as a nutritionist or an expert in the field. There are people who are out there that if you are really struggling with some specific nutrition questions, there are ways to see those people and to take advantage of their knowledge and do some coaching with them. And I think that's very important.
Yeah. There are people who
Goes
swear
along
by,
with the, oh, go ahead.
there are people who swear by the apple cider vinegar routine. Have you heard
Yeah,
that?
I heard that.
Yeah, well, what about apple cider vinegar? Is that kind of in the same category?
Yeah, it is. I tend to do this. This is my philosophy on foods and eating. The kind of diet that I want to have is a diet that I can keep up for the rest of my life. That's how I want to make my food choices. So when it comes to, there are people who swear by, Atkins is now in its 87th version of a diet, right? It's our paleo. And some of those things. So high protein, low carbs. So we keep having iterations of different things and different diets. At one point in time, I did a paper on this. There was the cigarette diet. Kid you not. Smoke a cigarette after dinner so you stop eating. This was back in the 20s and 30s, right? As a way to control your weight. I'm not kidding you. So I think that there are a lot of different fads that go through our lives. What I like to get to is, what can I do for every day for the rest of my life to take care of my body? And if I look at food as fuel, you said, even if it's, I would tell you this, where it comes to fermented foods, I mean, for me personally, that's not a flavor that settles real well with me. I don't care if it was like super good for me. I'm not sure I could even learn how to eat it. Right?
Yep, I agree.
Right.
So pick something that I can do and that I can do day in and day out. That's not extreme. And my point there was going to be, like when we talk about eliminating carbs from our diet, the reason that so when we eliminate a lot of those flours and sugars, we lose weight, and we lose weight relatively fast. But those particular iterations of diet eliminate all the carbs and sugars. And our body needs carbohydrates. That's our main source of energy. So the minute we put carbohydrates back in our bodies, we gain that weight. Our body has to have carbs in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, to me, instead of eliminating things or adding too much of one thing, how can I add and tweak little things in both my physical eating as well as my brain to get the fuel that my body actually needs for what I wanted to do? Cool. Any more questions? Did I get them all?
Yep,
Cool.
I'm all set.
All right. I will definitely post a couple of those resources. I'll post a link to Vega as well, but it's my Vega. And I definitely like the electrolyte products too. So you're going to see they have a sport line. They have a couple different lines in Vega. I don't know, you've got the Sprouts thing, and there was one other thing. I am going to look up the 6 ingredient bar, as well as an article on the 2,000 calories and the recommended daily amount, where those percentages fall into place. Okay.
Okay,
All
see you
right.
next week. Thanks,
All right.
CJ.
We'll see you all. Have a good one. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.